I never wanted any of this.
Hear that? Another sad excuse!
Clara Vance had a secret that could bankrupt every man in this room, but as the judge raised his gavel, it looked like she would take it to the grave. The mahogany doors of Courtroom 4 swung shut with a finality that felt like a guillotine. Clara sat at the scarred defense table, her fingers interlaced so tightly her knuckles turned a ghostly white. Across the aisle, Julian looked every bit the shark in his $3,000 suit, leaning back with a smirk that didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. His lawyer, a man with a voice like gravel, paced the floor while deconstructing Clara's life. My client provided everything, the lawyer droned, gesturing toward the mountain of falsified bank statements. And in return, Mrs. Vance provided nothing but silence and fiscal irresponsibility. Welcome, story lovers. Before we begin, hit like and let us know in the comments which city you're watching from. The judge peered over his spectacles, his gaze landing on Clara with visible disdain. Does the defendant have anything to say before I rule on the asset distribution? Julian's smirk widened. He knew she wouldn't speak. He had spent years convincing her that her voice was a liability, a broken instrument that only caused trouble. Clara felt the familiar lump of fear in her throat, the suffocating weight of his threats. She looked at the divorce decree, realizing it stripped her of her dignity. Suddenly, Clara's phone vibrated, a private notification that changed everything. The judge's gavel hovered, a wooden heartbeat away from ending her life as she knew it. Julian leaned over the aisle, whispering just loud enough for her to hear. "Accept it, Clara. You're worth nothing without my name on your ID." He expected her to flinch, to crumble into the quiet mouse he had spent a decade training. Instead, Clara's thumb swiped across her screen. The notification wasn't a text. It was a live feed of the global markets, blinking a code she hadn't seen in years. Her breath hitched. The fear was still there, pulsing in her chest. But a new layer was forming, a cold, sharp, crystalline doubt about Julian's supposed invincibility. "Mrs. Vance." The judge prompted, his patience evaporating. "This is your final opportunity to contest the valuation of Vance Holdings." Clara looked at Julian's lawyer, who was busy tucking away a folder labeled offshore accounts. She knew what was in there, or rather, what wasn't. Julian thought he had hidden his trail by draining their joint accounts, but he had forgotten one crucial detail about the woman he married. He had married a waitress, but he had never asked why a waitress understood high-frequency trading algorithms. "I don't contest his valuation of his company, Your Honor," Clara said, her voice trembling but audible. Julian chuckled, shaking his head at the court reporter. "But I do contest the ownership of the land it sits on." Julian's smile faltered as a heavy knock sounded at the courtroom doors. If this story is touching your heart, subscribe now. More real, powerful moments like this are coming, and the next one is unforgettable. The heavy doors creaked open, admitting a man in a charcoal suit carrying a briefcase sealed with a wax emblem Julian recognized instantly. It was the crest of the Sterling Trust, an entity that controlled more wealth than the city's top 10 banks combined. Julian stood up, his face reddening. "Your Honor, this is a private proceeding. This man has no standing here." The stranger ignored him, walking straight to Clara's table and bowing slightly. "The audits are complete, ma'am," he whispered. Clara took a deep breath, the resistance within her finally hardening into a shield. She looked at Julian, seeing not a giant, but a small man who had built a kingdom on a foundation of stolen sand. "What is this nonsense, Clara?" Julian hissed, his composure fracturing. "You're making a fool of yourself. Sit down before I make sure you leave here with even less than nothing." The judge pounded his gavel. "Order. Mr. Sterling, explain your presence." The representative stepped forward, placing a single gold-stamped document on the bench. "I am here because the land, the patents, and the very lease Julian Vance signed for his headquarters are not his. They belong to a blind trust established 20 years ago by the late billionaire Arthur Thorne." The room went deathly silent. Arthur Thorne had died without an heir, or so the world thought. Julian's eyes darted to Clara. "What does this have to do with her?" he asked, his voice cracking. Clara finally stood up. "It has everything to do with me, Julian, because I am the trust," Clara said, her voice now a calm, unwavering blade. She watched the blood drain from Julian's face as the judge scrutinized the lineage papers. The man who had spent a decade calling her a gutter find was now staring at the sole heiress to the Thorne empire. "You thought my silence was submission?" she continued, stepping out from behind the table. "But I was simply waiting for you to sign that decree. You wanted a divorce based on fiscal irresponsibility to keep your assets. Well, you succeeded. We are officially divorced." She smiled, a genuine, terrifyingly bright expression. "Which means you no longer have any marital claim to the woman who owns your debt." The judge looked up, his expression transformed from disdain to profound shock. "The documents are authentic, Mr. Vance. Your company's primary creditor is indeed the Thorne Trust. By signing this settlement, you have forfeited all indemnity." Julian collapsed into his chair, the power imbalance flipping so violently it seemed to steal the air from the room. He reached out to grab her sleeve, but she stepped back, her resilience finally yielding to total control. "Don't touch me," she said firmly. "My silence is over and your lease expires at midnight. You wanted me to have nothing, Julian. Now you get to see what that actually feels like." She walked out of the courtroom, leaving the noise of his ruined life behind. Cruelty is loud. Self-respect is quiet.